There's one. Kid, stop. Don't you know that that's dangerous?
No, that's silly.
Well, are you a trained professional?
No, I'm a kid.
Good answer. I mean, I ask him these silly questions because his bicycle has a warning label, and it's a finalist in this because the brochure warns of the dangers of biking and says that the riders seen are experienced experts or professionals. Professionals? They're kids like him. Bob, what are some of the other finalists?
How about a common dust mask? This is something you use when you're sanding the wall, maybe. But the warning label says, warning, does not supply oxygen. Of course it doesn't.
And, I mean, we called the company and they said, you know, government rules require us to say that because people think it does.
And if they don't put it on there, they could be sued, and they probably would be sued.
And with the label, that doesn't necessarily protect them either. They may still get sued.
Sometimes a crafty plaintiff lawyer will say, you put that warning label on there, so you're acknowledging that that was a possible harm that could happen, and you still produce that product. So if you follow their logic to the ultimate conclusion is, we'll no longer have any products that could potentially cause any danger. I mean, that's one of the reasons seesaws have vanished from playgrounds in America, is because the fear of being sued has have a crippling effect on life.
Seesaws I don't miss. I mean, vaccines, stuff like that, that's another story. Go ahead. What are your other...
How about a warning label? This is something, John, we've been doing this contest for 14 years, and it's the first time we've ever seen something like this. The warning label on this pen says, warning, pen caps can obstruct breathing. Keep out of mouth. Well, this came with instructions that were in 4 languages, but the warning label about doing something that we know is common sense was only in English. Well, Americans are no more likely. It underscores what we're saying here. No, Americans
we don't
are no
swallow
more likely.
more pen covers than other people.
But the manufacturer knows it won't get sued by, you know, people in Germany or other parts of the world that have the same pen.
And this one?
Warning label. This is a gun case. It's made to conceal a handgun.
And we're not allowed to have a handgun here in the studio, so we put one in.
Squirt gun.
Yeah, squirt gun.
But
and the warning says...
For gun only, not a functional day planner.
Now, I have to say that really seemed dumb to me, but we call the companies and get their replies, and in the case of this one, the company actually said, no, this wasn't because of liability. We sell day planners, and we just were making sure we weren't confusing our customers. So, Bob, I'm throwing this out of the contest. I think you should call the companies before you put this stuff in the contest.
And that's fine. We do this to acknowledge that litigation is so bad that that's why you see most of these warning labels.
So we're down to 4. Here's the last one. It's over here. It's this hot tub. You notice there's no water in the hot tub. I would have put water in here, but then I saw the label which says, warning, prevent drowning. Now, prevent child drowning. Why would a company put a stupid label like that on a hot tub, Bob?
Because they know if they don't, the lawyer will say, you failed to warn us. All of these lawsuits that drive wacky warning labels are there because the lawyer claims you failed to warn us. Even if it's common sense, even if everybody knows that still will drive a lawsuit that could force somebody into years of litigation and hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal bills.
All right, thank you, Bob. Coming up, the audience votes. You have our contestants here. The wackiest warning label. The winner gets $1,000. Who will that be? More than 100 people have offered their suggestions for the wackiest warning label. Bob has picked his top 5, and as I said earlier, he decided again he'd let you guys, our studio audience, vote to pick the winner. So he'll give $1,000 to the person who suggested the warning label that you pick. So who votes for the hot tub that says avoid drowning? All right, quite a few. How about the mask that says does not supply oxygen? All right, and the pen that says don't hold the cap in your mouth? It's not going to win. Or the bike company that puts on its brochure, warns of dangerous activity and says all the kids pictured are professionals? So what wins?
In one of the closest votes ever, the grand prize and $1,000 goes to the person who sent us the dust mask.
All right. That's someone named Alex Sines from Dallas, Texas. And second place gets $500. That's what?
And that was the bicycle.
That's what I thought too. The bike ad. John Nevin, Holt, Michigan.
Holt, Michigan.
Congratulations, you get that money. But now, your questions for our guests. I'm going to start with one from my Facebook page for you, Philip. What's one answer? Should we demand, this is from Patrick McCall, demand sunset rules on all regulations and legislation?
Absolutely. Anything that has budgetary impact has to be reconsidered every 10 years or so, because it just piles up like sediment in the harbor, and pretty soon nobody can comply with any rule because there are too many of them.
But sunset rules are the exception now.
Oh, laws almost never sunset. You could count on one hand the number of federal laws that have expired.
Yes, sir.
What would you do to fix this problem of all this litigation?
One of the things is greater awareness. People are familiar with Thomas Paine, who wrote Common Sense and helped spur on the American Revolution. What he wanted to do was ignite public opinion to get involved. And what we're trying to do is the same thing in the 21st century. We want to motivate people to get engaged in the process, to think about the roles that judges play, so that when judges are elected or when they vote for legislators, they know these issues.
But you also have to change the structure. We have to give judges, among others, a different concept of what their job is. You know, if somebody brings a lawsuit for $50 million against their dry cleaner for a lost pair of pants, it ought to get dismissed in about 30 seconds.
But judges could do that. Why don't they?
They don't think it's their job. I once debated the McDonald's hot coffee judge. He said, "Who am I to judge?" I mean, that is the orthodoxy in America. Judges have to act as gatekeepers for the rest of society. There are claims as a matter of law that are unreasonable, and they have to hold that right at the outset.
But judges aren't even on the radar screen for most people, and judges know that. So they know if nobody's paying attention, they can let these lawsuits go forward. So that's why public opinion is so important, to put the pressure on the judges to do the right thing that they're supposed to do.
Who's next? Yes, sir.
So as a believer in the markets, my understanding is that people acting in their own self-interest is a good thing. So, and it was actually mentioned at one point that these people are acting in their self-interest, they're not doing things for society's good, and that's bad. But I want to try to understand what's broken. So if all these guys are doing things in their self-interest, shouldn't there be someone else doing something else in their self-interest to stop them and everything works out?
Oh, there's a big difference. People are using law, which is state power. It's not freedom. It's just like it's like indicting somebody for money. So if you're going to go use state power where the marshal might come and take your home away, somebody on behalf of the state has to say, this is a reasonable claim or it's not. Otherwise, it's just letting some selfish person extort you using the hammer of the state.
I was once convinced by that. Like, the lawyers are an improvement over all this regulation. Instead of clumsy one-size-fits-all solutions from government, it's the individual lawsuit that feels like it's part of the free market and freedom. And in some ways it is, and they do some good, but they do much more harm. Yes, who's next?
Yeah, why are lawyers allowed to continue practicing law if they're bringing frivolous lawsuit after frivolous lawsuit? Don't these state bar associations take any disciplinary action against them?
Ha! No.
Right.
You know, ethics that used to be hard to get into good bar associations, now all you do is prove you have a law degree and you've never been indicted. I mean, it's really, anybody can make any argument. So bar associations need to stand for something. You're absolutely right.
I'm from New Jersey, and we also have bar associations, and we also have ethics boards. Neither one of them?
They don't do their jobs.
Go ahead. Sure.
Everybody is just discussing this for decades, whether it's tort reform or some other way of changing things. Why isn't anybody doing anything about it?
Politicians and political science will tell us that big change happens in big chunks. And it happens in our country every 30 or 40 years. Last time was the 1960s, when we woke up to lots of abuses like racism and gender discrimination, pollution, and other things, and we tried to fix them. We're at one of those periods in our country's history where we have to fix almost everything. It's just out of control. Regulations pressed down into people's daily lives, too much litigation, so much of it that John Stossel is one of the leading champions of fixing in this country. And that's why the group I chair, Common Good, is launching a campaign called Start Over. StartOver.org, because we're at one of those periods in history where we're going to have to fix this stuff finally. We can't stop talking about it, fix it.
And I would just add, I think it hasn't changed because nobody argues better than these trial lawyers. Practice makes perfect. They fight for a living. They use words, trickery, and deceit to win in court. They win in legislatures, too.
And they're investing a lot of money to get more laws on the books that allow them to sue for more reasons. The trial lawyers are the de facto third political party in America. They contribute so much money that it's hard to overcome the influence that they've purchased.
Thank you, Bob Dorigo Jones. Thank you, Philip Howard. Next, my take on lawsuit abuse. So many politicians are lawyers. Shouldn't surprise me that they churn this out every year. 80,000 pages of new rules every year. It's just on the federal level. Now, it's intuitive to lawyers that more rules improve life, that you can manipulate life with paper and procedure, but they're wrong. This spider web of rules cripples life, makes people afraid to trust their common sense. It makes everyone a potential lawsuit target. But that doesn't stop the politicians. They keep passing more of these rules, this many every day. And lawyers take those rules and use them to enrich themselves. So you'd think with all that money, you'd want one in your family. And yet when we ask people, do you want your child to become a lawyer? Some said this.
If you came to me and said, I want to be a lawyer, I'd say, what did I do wrong?
It's just kind of scary when you think about all the things that you could carry to court.
Not all of them are bad, but
we should have fewer lawyers. That would be a much better world.
Yes, it would be. We'll never have life without lawyers, but fewer would be good. Fewer lawsuits would be very good. We should have the English rule. No, I shouldn't call it that. It's a lawyer trick that has us calling it the English rule, the rule that says if I sue you and lose, I should have to pay your legal fees, pay for some of the damage I caused you, just some. But it's not the English rule, it's the rest of the world rule. Most every country has it except America. And America has the highest legal costs. Everything we buy costs more to pay for the lawyers, especially life-saving products. A company that makes pacemakers says lawsuits add thousands of dollars to the cost of each pacemaker. But the millions the lawyers take from us, the money isn't the worst part. Worse is the fear of lawsuits that robs us of much of the best stuff in life. The fear makes preachers and teachers afraid to hug a crying child, drives doctors to do tests and even surgeries that don't need to be done. And the fear of lawsuits cripples innovation. The FDA has approved a vaccine against Lyme disease. That would be good. You want some of it? Forget about it. No company will sell it because they might get sued. Companies stopped producing a pain-reducing silicone coating for hypodermic needles. Company directors said, we're sure our product is safe, but we don't want to risk a lawsuit. For every person that lawyers help, they hurt thousands more. We'll never have life without lawyers, but I'd like to look forward to having more of life without them. And that's our show. Thanks for watching. Good night.